Caitlin Clark just one player of the week again. That's not the story. The story is what happened in the minutes after, a coach's reaction that fans are dissecting frame by frame, a stat war between two fanbases that got personal fast, and a debate that somehow turns every single Caitlin Clark accomplishment into an argument instead of a celebration. In this video, we're going through exactly what happened, what's actually confirmed versus what's just online speculation, and why this keeps happening every time she wins something. Let's break it down. The award itself. Let's start with what's actually verified, because the numbers here are worth sitting with before we get into the noise around them. Caitlin Clark has been named Eastern Conference Player of the Week for the third time this season, her sixth time winning the award across her career. Over the qualifying stretch, she averaged 25.7 points, 9 assists, and 5 rebounds a game, shooting an efficient 53.7% from the field. That's not a compiler stats week where someone racks up empty numbers in garbage time. That's a guard controlling both ends of the box score while her team kept winning. Zoom out a little further and the pattern gets more interesting. This is now her third Player of the Week honor since the All-Star break alone. Indiana has won 5 of their last 6 games during the stretch, and they currently sit atop the Eastern Conference standings. When a player wins an individual award 3 separate times in a matter of weeks, that's usually treated as an uncomplicated story. Dominant stretch, deserved recognition, move on to the next storyline. That's not what happened here. The "is she even that good" argument. Almost immediately after the announcement, a familiar comment started recirculating online. The claim that Clark is only somewhere around the 10th or 11th best guard in the league, appearing in the reply section of the announcement itself. Here's the thing worth sitting with. If that ranking take were actually representative of how the league views her performance, you'd expect the players ranked ahead of her to be picking up these weekly honors regularly instead. But over the same stretch, it's Clark's name showing up on the list, not once, but 3 separate times since All-Star Weekend. That doesn't settle the "who's the best guard" debate on its own. Awards voting has its own quirks and doesn't perfectly track any one ranking system. But it does undercut the idea that this recognition is happening in a vacuum, disconnected from what's actually shown up on the stat sheet. What's also worth noting is the double standard fans have pointed to in how her performances get discussed. A 19-point, 10-assist night from Clark sometimes gets framed online as a quiet or underwhelming game. Put those same numbers next to almost any other young guard in the league, and it's typically framed as a strong all-around performance, not a letdown. Whether that's fair or not is genuinely debatable, but it is a pattern that shows up consistently enough that even neutral observers have pointed it out. The Brianne January clip. Now here's where things get murkier, and where I want to be careful about what's actually confirmed versus what's just people reading into a video clip. During the team announcement of Clark's award, a clip started circulating showing assistant coach Brianne January's reaction in the moment. Some fans online interpreted her expression as unenthusiastic or hesitant, and from there, the speculation escalated quickly, with people asking whether there's underlying tension between January and Clark. It's worth knowing the context here, because this isn't the first time a clip involving these two has gone viral. Earlier this season, footage circulated of Clark and January in an animated sideline exchange during a game against Seattle, Clark visibly reacting to defensive coaching feedback before moving to sit elsewhere on the bench. That moment split fans at the time too. Some called Clark difficult to coach, others pointed out that competitive sideline exchanges between players and coaches happen constantly across sports and don't necessarily signal a real rift. So when this new clip started making the rounds, it landed on top of an existing narrative that some fans had already built about the relationship between the two. That doesn't mean the newest interpretation is accurate. A single facial expression, taken from one frame of a much longer moment, is a genuinely weak basis for concluding anything about someone's actual feelings. It's worth being skeptical of confident claims about what someone really meant based on a few seconds of video, especially when neither Clark nor January has publicly commented on this specific moment. What we can say with more confidence: January is not a minor figure in this story. She's a former WNBA champion, part of the Fever's only championship team back in 2012, and was a 5-time WNBA All-Defensive First-Team player during her career. She's now the Fever's defensive-focused assistant coach. That context matters. This isn't some anonymous assistant, and any real tension between her and the franchise's most visible player would be a legitimate story. But would be is doing a lot of work in that sentence. Right now, what exists is a clip, a lot of interpretation, and no confirmation from either person involved. The Kelsey Mitchell fan debate. The third layer to this story is the one that's gotten the most heated in the comments. A chunk of Kelsey Mitchell's fanbase pushing back on Clark's award, arguing Mitchell deserved it instead. To be clear about something up front, this isn't really a Clark versus Mitchell issue at the player level. Both are important pieces of a Fever team currently sitting atop their conference, and nothing about one player's award diminishes what the other is doing on the court. This is much more a fanbase versus fanbase argument playing out online than any actual tension between the two players themselves. The core of the Mitchell camp's argument is usually about scoring volume, that Mitchell has had big scoring weeks of her own and deserves more recognition for it. That's a fair point to raise. Award voting for these weekly honors does weigh multiple stat categories and team success, not just points, which is part of why total scoring alone doesn't always determine who wins. The counterargument that's come back from Clark supporters focuses on her assist numbers specifically. A guard averaging 9 assists a game over an award qualifying stretch is directly responsible for a large share of her team's offense beyond her own scoring. That kind of playmaking tends to get weighted heavily in these decisions, which is likely part of why she's collected the honor 3 times this season already. Here's the honest read on this debate. It's less about actual disagreement over who's playing well. Nobody's arguing Mitchell has had a bad season, and more about two fanbases competing for whose player gets more public credit. That's a pretty normal dynamic in sports fandom, but it tends to get amplified fast on social media, where nuance doesn't travel as well as outrage does. Why this keeps happening? Step back from this specific week, and there's a broader pattern worth naming. Almost every individual accomplishment Clark receives turns into a multi-day online argument instead of a straightforward celebration. Part of that is simply a function of her visibility. She's the most discussed player in the league, so any moment involving her, positive or negative, gets amplified far beyond how the same moment would play out for almost anyone else. A raised eyebrow from a coach, a stat comparison between teammates, an old clip resurfacing, none of these would likely become a national story if they happened around a less scrutinized player. The flip side of that visibility is that it creates real incentive for channels, including ones in this exact space, to manufacture controversy out of ambiguous moments, reading confident narratives into a single frame of video, or framing a fan-based disagreement as if it's a real rift between players. It's worth being a little skeptical of any video, including this one, that claims certainty about what someone was thinking based on a few seconds of footage. What's actually verifiable is simpler and, honestly, less dramatic. Clark had another statistically dominant week, won an award for it, and the reaction online got messy, the way it usually does. That's the real story, even if it's a less exciting headline than what some of the speculation suggests. So where do you land on this? Is the reaction to Clark's award fair scrutiny, or has this turned into overreaction to a single expression and a fanbase rivalry? Let me know in the comments. I read all of them. If you want to stay on top of every Fever storyline as it develops, subscribe and turn on notifications. We'll be back soon with the next one. Thanks for watching the Basket Frame. See you in the next video.